Okay, let's open to questions.
Okay, Ariel. One thing, when it was almost like a verbal sanction when Ukraine started attacking oil facilities in Russia, there were some American leaders were saying, "Wait a minute, that might raise the price of gas in the United States. We probably
Before the elections.
Huh?
Before the elections.
Yeah, I understand. Well, look, most of the people like you and I who are fighting for Ukraine, we thought, what? We're worried about a little raise in gas prices, and we don't want to attack any. We don't want to let Ukraine to attack any energy facilities in Russia. That didn't make much sense.
No, it didn't.
Ukraine thankfully just went ahead with that.
Yeah.
Do you think that's...
Yeah, I think we tend to over meddle, we over regulate our allies, and not only Ukraine. We're trying to dictate to Israel how to prosecute the war in Gaza after Israel was brutally attacked. We are, worried about military targets inside the Russian territory. I hear that our long-range missiles come with a limitation for Ukrainians not to attack targets inside Russia, and I don't understand that at all.
Well, then they say our battle in Kharkiv, close to Russia, there's lots of things that are being done which limit the Ukrainians' ability to defend themselves. Like you said, that doesn't seem to be consistent with our policy. And one final question. We've been saying we're going to stay with Ukraine for as long as it takes. Now, lately, the State Department's been saying, well, we're going to stay with Ukraine until they're a free country and prosperous and all that. But of course, no one ever says they don't use the word victory. They don't use the word defeat Putin. They don't do that. They say, oh, they're scared of what Putin might do. Well, Ariel, what more could he do? He steals children, he kills people, he bombs lands. He's probably the most demonic leader we've seen since, Stalin and Hitler and others. So, what's your feeling about that? Why don't we say our objective is to throw Putin out of Ukraine and let Ukraine continue to be a free and independent country? And we basically promised to do that. And of course, we broke that promise, and the United States was responsible for Ukraine giving up their nuclear weapons, and we paid every penny to destroy their nuclear weapons, basically with the understanding we would defend Ukraine. Well, we all think we're slow in defending Ukraine. We still haven't said our goal is to defeat Russia. Any comments from you about that, about the policy area? It still seems to be short of victory for Ukraine.
Yes. I talked to senior administration officials in the Pentagon, State Department, etc., and they try to find language and formulas that go something like that. Oh, Ukrainians should decide themselves how the end game looks. And that would open the door to Ukrainian territorial losses, losing Crimea, losing Donbass. That's in the best case. In the worst case, if we do not provide, and Europeans, let's not get Europeans off the hook. Ukraine is in Europe. Ukraine is the largest country that is only in Europe. Of course, Russia is in Europe and in Asia. Russia is huge. But as the largest European country that borders NATO, I think it's also up to our European allies to do much more to make sure that Ukraine can defend itself and stay independent. What horrifies me, absolutely horrifies me, because I'm a native Russian speaker, I listen and read Putin, Medvedev, Shoigu, and the ideologues, the Dugins and the Solovyovs, unfiltered, and they deny Ukraine the right to exist. They say Ukraine is not a country, Ukrainians are not a people. This is genocidal. This is massive violation of international law, and somehow that is not highlighted by US officials. It's not about this piece of land or that piece of land. It's not even about who rules in Kiev. Somehow they said, oh, Poroshenko is an illegal president and Zelensky is an illegal president. And now they sort of amplify it because the elections in Ukraine are not happening during the war. Well, you yourself said before that Zelensky has no legitimacy. So the Russians are, and I saw it with Georgia too. It's not only now, it was also in 2008 with Georgia. They are denying the Ukrainian people the right to exist. And they're trying to wipe them out. And we saw, somebody mentioned the children that are being brainwashed and turned into Russians and whatnot. And I think this is a huge danger to Europe. If Russia is not defeated in Ukraine, it will be a threat to NATO, to the Baltic states, to Poland, and to others. It's a threat to Moldova. And this is very serious because it's not just Russia and it's not about Ukraine. I wrote before the war, the big invasion of February 22 started, I wrote, this is not about Ukraine, it's about the balance of power in Europe and therefore the balance of power in the world. It's Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, Venezuela, and sometimes I have a suspicion that other countries are sort of wink, wink, nod, nod, support that coalition because they hate America and the West so much. And we saw what South Africa is doing, and South Africa is gravitating towards China and Russia. This is a kind of conflict, not unlike the Cold War that we are now in. It's an existential conflict for the West. And notice, on our campuses, you didn't see demonstrations for Ukraine. You saw demonstrations for Hamas. You don't see, left wing of the Democratic Party worried about Ukraine all the time and the humanitarian catastrophe in Ukraine. They worry about other things. And that raises questions, and not just here in the United States, in Europe as well. This raises questions about the understanding of the threat, willingness to fight, including sanctions that sort of started this conversation. And in order to fight, either you knock your opponent quickly, you have something unexpected that the opponent did not expect, and you knock them out, or you win in the war of attrition. And today we have an opportunity. You take the United States, $23 trillion trillion Europe, about the same, maybe just a little bit less than the United States. So $45 trillion versus Russia's 1.4. On a good day, depends on the oil price. Oil price fluctuates, and so does the Russian GDP. North Korea, we're not evenly matched here. We're much, much stronger, but we're much, much slower. We're not mobilized. We're not recognizing the threat to us, to the West, to our values, and to our civilization.
Thank you very much, Ariel. You summed it up very good. It's really amazing, the ignorance of some people and their lack of understanding about what's going on. We all know that Putin needs to be defeated sometime. What's better for the West? Ukraine is doing the fighting. Ukrainians are dying. All they want is our hardware and our support. Why is that a problem? Shouldn't be a problem. So let's go on now to the chat line. Nadia, put your email address up there, put my email address up there so people can get a hold of us if they have further questions. So let's go to the chat line. Ariel, thank you very much for that very specific analysis, and your summary there is absolutely 100% correct. And it's shocking that too many people don't go along with that. And one U.S. senator called our support from Ukraine welfare. I mean, it was just shocking. You got a question?
Morgan, let me just add two things. Number one, both Russia and China are watching our behavior, and by our, I mean US and Europe, like a hawk. The weaker we look, the higher are the chances that China will attack Taiwan. And then we are in the world of trouble, because the Chinese economy and Chinese military industrial production capability are higher than Russia. The Chinese economy is almost a match to ours, and the Chinese industrial base is bigger than the United States. We will be in a lot of trouble. And secondly, if we are not demonstrating that we are committed to this war, it's kind of like the Spanish Civil War. The West and the Soviet Union supported the Republican side, and Hitler and Mussolini supported General Franco. And Hitler and Mussolini won, and that meant to them that they can launch a broader conflict. They intimidated the West to give them Czechoslovakia. Hitler did. Italy did not receive Czechoslovakia, clearly. But then he didn't stop there. He perceived a weakness. He went to Poland, and he started World War II. So my concern is that if we're perceived as weak and as the party that can be squeezed, worse things will happen. Be it in the Middle East, be it in East Asia, we need to demonstrate our capability and commitment to fight.
Thank you, Ariel. We have several questions from our audience. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your participation. The first question came from Greg Fishman, our Secretary Treasurer, who is with ABT Global. So you mentioned, Ariel, that countries like Russia, Iran, and North Korea get massively sanctioned, but still reboot their manufacturing base into military rails that boost their economy. They thus consume their precious export into production inputs domestically. This creates jobs and thus support. So besides the obvious impetus for perpetual warfare, what are the likely effects we can expect from this industrial militarization in the years to come, Greg asks.
We saw that Russia recognized that their quality and quantity of equipment in the beginning stages of the war was not sufficient. And now they're doing two things. They're emptying the Cold War storage of tanks, of ammo, of cannon, etc. But as I mentioned, they put the economy on the war footing, meaning they have economy like in World War II, working 3 shifts, 7 days a week. They're paying pretty good money for Russia. They're also paying tremendous amount of money to the soldiers, and if the soldiers are killed, to the families. It's a huge drain. And I don't understand why and how there are not enough people there to come to Putin and say, hey, this is a venture that will bankrupt Russia in the long run. But so far, we didn't see it. We didn't see the reserves dwindling, even after we seized half of their reserves. We did not see the GDP falling. So that means to me, they are fighting and sustaining the economy. Iran, I see, and I know anecdotal evidence, I know the GDP figures. Iran is not doing well. Iranian cost of living is way up, and that regime is unpopular among educated urban elites. And we saw the demonstrations 2009. We saw the uprising led by women 2022. We did not help Iran. U.S. did not help Iran. China, again, it's a country with a tradition of nationalism. And the deal in China, like with Putin, there was a similarity. It was very similar. You shut up, you leave us to rule, but your standard of living goes up. The jig is up in Russia. The jig is almost up in China because we saw a lot of economic problems, but the totalitarian controls both in Russia and in China are so strong that we do not see massive protest yet. If we're learning from our experience in the Cold War, slowly, the discontent will rise, or they will try to have a knockout victory before that. As I said, it's either the exhaustive war of attrition scenario or a knockout scenario. And knockout scenario can escalate to nuclear war quickly. And that is a concern. Clearly, Russians are saber rattling with nuclear weapons, but at the same time, it is a nuclear power with very little public discussion of what they're doing. All of the decisions are practically in the hand of one, as people in political science called it, or history studies call it, a warlord. A warlord is a top leader that has all the military and economic controls, and Putin is a quintessential warlord, with Xi Jinping close with the Ayatollah Khamenei, who's 85 years old, and somehow, miraculously, the guy who was competing with his son for the supreme leader position after his demise died in a helicopter crash. But he is too a warlord. It just Iranians don't fight a big conventional war. They fight by proxy. They fight through terrorism. But look at Iran. They're controlling 4 countries in the Middle East: Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, in addition to Iran itself.
Thank you, Ariel.
Okay, let's try to keep the question short, the answer short, so we can move on. Did you
Okay.
put our email addresses up on the screen? Okay.
Okay, so we have a question from anonymous attendee, but I will read it. It's an interesting question. Sanctions are designed to change behavior, you said. Many individuals and entities that were sanctioned have changed their behavior, pulling assets out of Russia, stop business relations in Russia. Is there any significant efforts or a streamlined process of sanction authorities such as U.S. Treasury that allows entities to be delisted from sanction list? Maybe Mr. Deripaska is asking this question.
Well, if Mr. Deripaska is asking this question, it's not going to help him because he has a record, as long as my hand, that predates the war. However, we saw some decisions in European courts that delisted some of these guys. And as I said in the beginning of my remarks, some of these people are either caught, members of family were caught in the sanctions, when the question is if, for example, a son or a daughter is estranged from the parents, has its own livelihood in a different country, why they have to be caught in that? Sisters, brothers, cousins? Question mark. It's a matter of policy. But again, I repeat, it's administrative decision. It's not a law. You can go to court, or you can have an administrative process that you can appeal. And I know for a fact that people were listed because of a publication in some newspaper. So it's not like a serious intelligence process or something like that. There was a publication that Mr. X is an oligarch. Mr. X may not be living in Russia for 15 years and has a business there, or doesn't have a business there, took his business years back and put the business in Europe. And nevertheless, these people got caught in this process. So yes, I think there should be a process, either administrative or legal, by which people should be delisted if the evidence justifies that.
Peter Borisov is asking, what is the US EU doing to promote regime change in Russia?
Hi, Peter. I think US pretty much is on record not promoting regime change. Moreover, I'll mention to you, I just have something from Bloomberg on this subject. US refused on the highest level to say that after this fifth fake elections, they refused to say that Putin is not an illegitimate ruler. So they de facto recognize Putin as a legitimate ruler. And my question is, why? Not only there are court findings against Putin as a war criminal, also very clear that he violated the Russian constitution with his quote unquote re-election. And the notice I just saw coming on Bloomberg is that Putin ordered retaliatory measures if any assets will be seized in the West. Clearly, we do not have as many assets, but there's still a lot of Western companies that are active in Russia, either openly or through proxies and Russian subsidiaries and partners. And I read about these cases all the time. Something as innocuous as a mattress manufacturer that refused to leave Russia. The big names usually leave, the smaller names don't. And then the big names sometimes have all kinds of sanctions bypass, and then they get in trouble, and then they say, well, we didn't do it, it's not us. So it's a murky, opaque area, an interesting area from legal enforcement, intelligence point of view. And yes, we need to do more to stop these violations. As for regime change, look, it would have been much easier to institute regime change in a nuclear aspirant, a country that is trying to get nuclear weapons, where demonstrations are in the streets again and again. Iran, and we don't do that. North Korea, we don't do that. I think we're out of regime change business after our very bad experience in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Ariel, $1 million question. What will Trump do about Russia if he won the election?
Nobody knows. Honestly, we saw the rhetoric. Trump has very unsettling rhetoric. And I know, and I heard Trump regurgitating these talking points that somebody is whispering in his ear that the Crimea is Russian, that Ukraine is this, that, or the other thing. But I think Trump also understands that if we abandon Ukraine, we'll be the loser. And he doesn't like to be seen as a loser. I think that Trump, even more than the Biden administration, there's amazing continuity between Trump and Biden on China, and Trump will be rougher on Iran. And I hope he's disappointed how his friend Kim Jong-un treated him after they kissed on wherever they met there in Korea. So with Russia, hard for me to predict, but I am concerned. I am worried if Trump is elected, what kind of policy he will proceed with in Ukraine. And in that respect, it's so important that, Germany, France, UK, Italy consolidate and have a European policy on Ukraine, because together their GDP combined is times higher, bigger than Russia. The industrial capacity is bigger than Russia. They can do it even if Trump, God forbid, disconnects from Ukraine.
We have a question from Mig Bednarik, Floor Company. If you heard there are any updates to formal U.S. government policy allowing U.S. businesses and contractors to operate in Ukraine to support defense security cooperation agreements?
I always said that we need to invest in the Ukrainian military-industrial complex. After all, it was the leading part of the Soviet Union. It focused on military-industrial production. Ukraine did. Kharkiv produced tanks. Yuzhmash produced intercontinental ballistic missiles, and there was other missile production. It's a lost opportunity for the West. Can we do it under fire now? I do not know. And I think wherever there's a justification and government guarantees, our companies should go into Ukraine and help Ukraine to manufacture weapons for its defense.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are running out of time and covered most of the questions. There is one question, I don't know how accurate it is, but why did Orban cancel pipeline projects to the Adriatic?
I need to look it up. I'm surprised. First of all, the term is an interconnector. And if you connect, there is a terminal in Krk Island. It's a word with no vowels, K-R-K, Krk. In Croatia, I've been there. I saw the terminal. And then from that terminal, you can connect to Austria, and from Austria, you can connect to Hungary. Whether that interconnector was canceled by Orban, honestly, I won't be surprised. There's a lot of questions to Mr. Orban and his relationship with Russia, but I need to check that.
Nadia, put our email addresses up there and leave them. Don't take them down. Just put our email addresses up there and leave them. How about yours, Ariel? Do you want anybody to be able to have yours, or
my email is available on both International Tax and Investment Center website. It's Cohen at iticnet.org, and the Atlantic Council email, Cohen at atlanticcouncil.org.
Yeah, I just posted your email and your team's email addresses, Wesley, Quinn, and Aaron, just in case, and ours, Morgan, yours and mine. No more questions.
We like to be open. We like to have conversations. We like to be able to
Right.
communicate. Ariel,
I'm also swamped. I'm swamped with work, so I don't promise very detailed answers.
Yeah.
It really depends what it is.
I know. Ariel, as we look down the road, does the United States have the capacity to put on some new sanctions that would be effective or more effective? We keep hearing that there for a while, like every 2 weeks, they would put more on. We said, well, if they were effective, why did they wait as long? There's a lot of financial restrictions, sanctions. There's a lot of other sanctions.
But they find the ways around it. I mean, it's amazing. And yeah, some of this stuff was some of the sanctions inconvenience Russians who, for example, were accustomed to go on vacation in Turkey or in Egypt. And I think the airlines that fly to Russia, maybe somebody will be examining, should they be flying to Russia? Because besides Western Airlines, they stopped flying. The two hubs in Europe for Russians are Belgrade and Istanbul. We know that. UAE is a huge hub and also area that people relocated. And speaking of relocation, I may be in a minority, but I think we should greet all the STEM talent. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. There's a lot of STEM talent that left Russia. Biology, life sciences, and just educated people and business people. If they want to leave and not to be a part of the Putin venture that destroys Ukraine and destroys Russia, let them come. Give them visas officially, instead of people trying to get through the southern border illegally. Europe took 8 million Ukrainians. They can take a lot of Russians as well. That probably will be for the benefit of Europe as well. But why keep these taxpayers and these capable people in Putin's Russia?